Snap-in versus fixed arch. Which one actually costs less in the long run? I've done more than 2,000 of both, and I'll tell you straight up which one wins. I'm Dr. Madanese, an implant surgeon with over a decade focused entirely on full arch cases. I follow patients in both groups at year 2, 5, and year 8. I can tell you which one most patients end up wishing they'd never chosen. We're going to go through the honest case for each option, the one thing that actually determines which is right for you and what you can do tonight to run the real numbers. Snap-ins have a real case behind them. They're held in by implants, which makes them more stable than a plain removable denture. The cost up front is much lower than fixed arch, and they come out, which some patients prefer, especially those who want to take them out at night. The snap-in became popular because it costs less and asks less of the practice. You need fewer implants, usually 2 or 4 instead of the 4 to 6 used in a fixed arch. The surgery is shorter for patients with failing teeth who can't afford fixed arch right now. Snap-ins look like a good first step. The problem with snap-ins shows up over time. The clips that hold the denture to the implants wear down. Those parts need to be replaced every 1 to 2 years, if not more often. The denture base needs to be relined or swapped out too. And because the denture still sits on the gum, the bone underneath keeps shrinking. You're paying to replace the same worn parts every year or two for the rest of your life. And your bone keeps shrinking the whole time. The real question is whether a fixed arch actually fixes those problems or whether it has hidden costs of its own. A fixed arch is permanent. The arch is held in by 4 to 6 implants and screwed in place. It doesn't come out. You brush it, you floss around it, and treat it like your own teeth, with no soaking overnight, no removing before bed, and no clips to replace. More patients have learned what fixed arch actually gives them, and the demand has grown. The results are completely different from anything removable. Patients who've done it say they eat things they gave up years ago. They say they walk into a room without thinking about their teeth. Patients tell other people that's been driving the demand. The cost up front is much higher. The surgery is more complex, which means you need a surgeon with a lot more training, better tools, and a much more careful plan. A fixed arch done by someone without the case volume and the right setup creates risks that a well-placed snap-in doesn't. A fixed arch placed by a practice without the training and the case volume to do it right is a worse outcome than a well-placed snap-in. Comparing these two options on price alone misses the most important factor. The thing that actually decides which one wins is something different. If this is helping you think through the decision, subscribe before you keep watching. Every video in the series is built for the patient who wants to walk into a consult already knowing what to ask. There's a full series here covering every part of this decision. Most people run one number: snap-in price versus fixed arch price. Day 1, the snap-in number is smaller, so they stop there. But that number leaves out the cost that builds up over time. Have you added up what the snap-in clips will cost to replace over 10 years? Does that total still look smaller than the fixed arch quote? Has anyone shown you what bone loss under a snap-in does to the fit of a denture over, say, 5 years? A patient who pays to replace clips at year 2, gets a reline at year 4, and needs a new denture around year 8 will end up spending much more than the day 1 quote showed. If you're deciding on day 1 price alone, you're comparing two options that cost very different amounts over 10 years. Snap-ins have a bill that comes back every year or two, sometimes more than that, forever. Fixed arch has one cost and then it's done. The patients who choose snap-ins as the cheaper option and then switch to fixed arch 5 years later say the same two things every time. They wish they'd run the 10-year numbers first, and they wish someone had told them what bone loss actually means before it showed up on a scan. The verdict isn't based on which option looks better on paper. It's based on what actually happens to patients in both groups over years of real follow-up. The patients I see who spent 3 to 5 years in snap-ins before switching describe it the same way. The first year felt like a fix. By year 2, something needed replacing. By year 4 or 5, the bone loss had changed the fit enough that the denture was moving in ways it hadn't before. Somewhere in there, they started to wonder whether they'd fix the problem or just delay it. The patients who went fixed from the start don't have that conversation. They come in for their follow up and they're done. The difference between those two groups at year 5 is clear enough that I won't pretend the comparison is close. Living with a result that never quite feels done costs more than money. Snap-ins feel like a fix at first. Over time, for most patients, they start to feel like a bill with no end in date. Fixed arch is a fix from day one and stays that way. Snap-in dentures are a replacement cycle. Fixed arch is where the cycle ends. Most patients leave a consult with a quote and no way to judge it. The Tonight test lets you run the real comparison yourself on your own terms before anyone pushes you toward a choice you haven't fully worked out. Before your next consult, work through these 4 steps. Step 1. Write down the snapping quote you've received. Then call or email that practice and ask, what does it cost to replace these clips? How often does that happen? And how long does the denture base last? Get a real number for each. Step 2. Multiply the clip costs by how often it happens over 10 years. Add the cost of a new denture base. Write the 10-year snap-in total next to your day 1 quote and compare them. And step 3. Get the full breakdown of any fixed arch quote you've received. Ask what's included in the plan, the temporary teeth, the final arch, and the follow-up care. And put that total next to your 10-year snap-in total. Step 4. Ask both practices this question. What happens to my bone over time under each option? A practice with real fixed arch experience will answer that clearly. A practice that hedges or changes the subject has told you something important. The price gap between snap-ins and fixed arch is real upfront. The 10-year gap is bigger. And what you wake up with every morning for the rest of your life matters most of all. One of these is a fix. The other is a bill that keeps coming. You deserve to know which is which before you sign. If you want to understand what the fixed arch process actually looks like from the day you walk in through the day you walk out with permanent teeth, there's a video on this channel called Can You Really Walk Out of One Appointment with a Full New Set of Permanent Teeth? It covers the full timeline in detail, including surgery day, the healing period, and why the timeline most practices quote are always longer than they need to be. The link is on the screen now.